Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpada Shankaram Lokasankaram Sadasiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Varyantam Vande Guru Varambaram. In my earlier lecture, I made a reference to the three levels of reality accepted by the Advaitin: Paramarthika, Vyavaharika, and Pratibhasika. I introduced this distinction in the context of the definition of an object which is real. An object is real if it remains unsublated. That is the most important feature for understanding the nature of the reality. And what is known through the pramana should be something new, not already known by another pramana. So that means that two characteristic features are incorporated in the definition of an object which is said to be real. The object should not have been known through some other pramana, and it should also fulfill the test of not being sublated or negated or contradicted by a subsequent pramana. So generally I said that Advaitin proceeds on the basis of a simple test or application. Any object known as it is accepted to be true. And it is declared to be false only when the cognition that we have gets sublated or denied or contradicted. Denial, negation, bada. I am using these three words so that people can easily understand the meaning that is sought to be conveyed. Sanskrit word is bada. It should not suffer bada, sublation. Now, why it is usually the case that apart from talking about the evidence of these pramanas and all that one, we always rely upon scripture. Shastrigal has been telling that for every aspect that we have, every idea that we have, there is a scriptural support. But if you quote the scriptural support, though legitimate, is not usually acceptable to others who try to understand the distinction that we make in Advaita. That means that others always suggest that the triple distinction that we make should be intelligible even when we try to look at it from the perspective of reasoning. And since I have been talking to some of these foreign scholars, either when they come to Madras or when I happen to go elsewhere, they say that, could you explain how the threefold distinction that he make is phenomenologically grounded. Phenomenologically grounded. Phenomenologically grounded. That is phenomenology, phenomenological, phenomenologically grounded, established. Now, why did they bring in phenomenology? I have been saying that Advaita adopts the phenomenological method in developing its problems. How? We hold the view that the ultimate revealing principle for knowing anything is consciousness. Consciousness is the ultimate revealing principle. Whatever is known, it is known through the light of consciousness, through the evidence of consciousness, Chit. In addition to consciousness, we do admit the apparatus of knowing anything, the instruments of knowing anything, such as the mind, the senses, and all that. The mind and the senses play an important part as cognitive instruments. It's not denied. Since we proceed on the basis of a clear dichotomy between the self and the not self. A clear dichotomy, a division. The self on the one hand, and the rest of it as not self, other than the self. Since we proceed on the basis of this dichotomy, we say that the self, which is of the nature of consciousness, therefore we replace the self as consciousness, just consciousness. That is the essential nature of the self. And therefore the dichotomy is rephrased in this way: consciousness and everything other than consciousness. Everything means starting from the mind. Is mind consciousness? No. Senses consciousness? No. Objects of the world conscious, body consciousness? No. The things of the world? No. That is the basic distinction that Advaita is having, Atman and Anatman. We don't have to give a long list of Anatman, excepting to say that at the human level, at the micro level, first we have the mind, the antakarana, the senses, and the body. The rest of the things of the world. On the other side, there is only consciousness, the self. That means to the Advaitian, the central principle for knowing anything, for understanding anything, for transacting anything, the ultimate principle in terms of which we do all that, that ultimate principle is consciousness. That is also what phenomenology says. A very important movement that we have. The word phenomenology is new, it is a Western word. But the method is old for us. Shankara follows that method. And if you want to have a clear way in which this method has been fully adopted, you have to read Drik Drisya Viveka. There is Drik on the one hand and Drisya on the other. The Drik is consciousness. The drishya is everything other than consciousness. Everything other than consciousness. So, the dichotomy, you can put the dichotomy in any way you like. There is no compulsion. The self and the not self. Atman and Anatman. Consciousness and things other than consciousness. So, when I do that one, things hyphen other hyphen than hyphen consciousness. A long hyphenated expression. Philosophers do. It may look a little odd for us since we think of English only in our own context. We can also think of English in the context of others. Western philosophers, particularly continental philosophers like Heidegger, Gadamer, they use this kind of hyphenated expression. So, consciousness is the revealing principle for phenomenology, for Advaita. And its evidence is certain. Whatever it says is certain. You can't question that one. It does its work. But the problem may arise because of the mind or because of the senses. The fault is not in consciousness. It does its function. Just as the sun does its function, revealing the things of the world, so also consciousness reveals the things of the world. If there is any distortion or misunderstanding, that is not because of consciousness, that is because of extraneous factors such as the mind and the senses. But still it does its function. There is an expression in Naiskarmya-siddhi, Shastram Vasayate Arkavati. Even Shastra can only reveal things to you, like the sun, Arkavati. More than that, it cannot do. Can it compel you? No. It can only reveal things. The sunlight reveals the things of the world. Whether you take it or not, whether you reject it or not, it is not the concern of the sun. It does its work. If you develop a desire for a thing, if you think that it is useful, you would like to have it. If you think that it is not useful, you are indifferent to that one. If it is harmful, you try to avoid it. Similarly, Shastra gives you information. It's a book of information to you. It's a consultant. You are not bound by what the consultant tells you. You seek his advice. So is the case with regard to consciousness. But its evidence is apodictic. What it reveals is certain. The rest of it is left to you. And in phenomenology, we use an expression, apodictic. Apodictic, certain. Phenomenologists use this expression, apodictic, certain. See, don't ask the question, should we use the same expression? We don't have to. But you know that usually the terms which are in currency, which are in usage, better that we use the same terms. That is in the history of philosophy. Time was when they used the concept of substance. Rationalists used the term concept of substance. Then it gave way to some other way. The rationalists came into the picture. The empiricists came into the picture. Similarly, it is always desirable to use the term which is in currency, which is in usage. If you get into the realm of phenomenology, just as for example when we get into the realm of Advaita, Drik, many people may not know the real meaning. The real meaning. Hiriyanna doesn't want to translate the word Drik as subject, even the term. He has got certain reservations. So when we give the translation, we have to be very careful. Sometimes it leads to various problems not originally expected. So this term, apodictic, is used with a phenomenologist. Therefore we say the evidence of consciousness is certain, unquestionable, apodictic. The evidence of the light of the sun is certain, apodictic. It does its work. The rest what we do is left to us, depending upon the other factors such as the mind and the senses. The mind plays a most important part. Now, so when we talk about the three levels of reality, certain objects which are called empirical, that is simple. Certain objects which we call phenomenal, it's a word that is used in the Western philosophy. And then what we say as absolutely real. On what basis do we make such a distinction? When I was in Madras, when I was teaching classes, an American scholar came and then he was so much interested in phenomenology. He appreciated Advaita. Therefore, you framed a question to me. Will you please tell me how, what you say about the threefold structure of reality is phenomenologically grounded, established? Because then there will be a kind of certainty, because you proceed on the basis of consciousness as the ultimate reality, that which reveals everything, supreme principle, which is identical with Brahman, the self. So phenomenologically you tell me how you are able to formulate this kind of a threefold distinction. First, I didn't know how to answer. I told him, I will try to think about the problem, how it can be done, because I have not done so far, but the question seems to be very relevant, and we could also try, apart from quoting the authority of scripture, to show how this is phenomenologically grounded. I thought about it. Then I came to the conclusion subsequently that there are two principles which we can formulate, which reflects 100% the Advaita position. What we say and what is supported by the scripture, we could put it this way. The first principle is whatever is affirmed by consciousness can never be denied. Whatever is affirmed, I put abbreviation, by consciousness can never be denied. Whatever is affirmed by consciousness can never be denied. Supposing consciousness tells me this is a chair, I accept it. And we have got Sada-pramanya-vada. That is the evidence. It says that it is a chair, this is a chair, I accept it. Of course, consciousness reveals the chair through the instruments, cognitive instruments. The mind plays its part, the senses play their part, all that is there. In the absence of consciousness, neither the mind nor the senses can give you any kind of a cognition, because they are material, like a piece of wood, and no material object can reveal anything. Are you clear? No material object. Then this piece of wood can reveal the existence of so many objects. No, it cannot. Because it is material, jadatvat. That is the karana. Jada. Jadavastu. Everything other than consciousness, starting from the mind, is jada, material, and therefore incapable of revealing anything. If we say that the mind and the senses are the cognitive instruments, it is by courtesy, upacharat. The real revealing principle is only consciousness. Its evidence is apodictic. Everything is dependent upon consciousness, according to phenomenology. The entire drisya prapancha is dependent upon the drik. There is only one drik, one self, one consciousness, one Brahman. Don't think that I am a drik, you are a drik. Well, that is in a secondary sense. In me there is consciousness, in you there is consciousness, in everybody there is consciousness. It functions through a certain medium located in the mind-sense-body complex. Therefore, it appears to be different. What differentiates me and you and somebody else is not consciousness. It is the mind-sense-body complex. Therefore, we think in terms of a plurality of self. The Sankhya thought that there is a plurality of Purusha because of this problem. This concept of Purusha comes very close to the concept of the self, of the Advaita, Atmanadvaita. But this is a limiting factor in the Sankhya. So, consciousness, the evidence of consciousness is certain. Therefore, it says whatever is affirmed by consciousness. How does it affirm? This is such and such. That is such and such. It gives an affirmation. What is affirmed by consciousness can never be denied. Can you deny that one? When I say it is a rope, you accept it as a rope, real rope. I'm not talking about the snake rope, rope snake, real rope. What is affirmed by consciousness, this is a table, yes. And I'm also Swadapramanyavarian. Anything that is cognized is accepted as real, unless it is disproved subsequently. Then the second principle is whatever is denied by consciousness can never be accepted. Whatever is denied by consciousness, whatever is denied by consciousness can never be accepted. Whatever is denied by consciousness is never accepted. Thank you. Supposing it says it is not a rope. There is actually it's a rope. I didn't see it as a rope. I'm taking this rope snipping example. I didn't see it as a rope. Instead, I see it as a snake. So what is my initial cognition? This is a snake. This is a snake. I accept it. Whatever is affirmed by consciousness can never be denied. I accept the evidence of consciousness. It tells me this is a snake. Then subsequently, it denies it. No, it is not a snake, but a rope. Whatever is denied by consciousness can never be accepted. When consciousness now tells me it is not a snake, but a rope, I can't say, no, it's only a snake. No. So when I make the affirmation that it is a snake, the evidence is consciousness. When I deny it, this is what is called badhaka jnana. Badhaka jnana. Even then, our only evidence is consciousness. Ultimately, we depend upon consciousness. It has done its work properly. But the problem arises not because of the consciousness, but because of other extraneous factors closely associated with that. It is not its business to disown them. They are there. We have to make a correction. And these two principles, which I consider to be phenomenologically grounded, which a real justice to consciousness, which would also accept the part played by the other cognitive instruments, mind and the senses, that helps us to formulate the three-decker level of reality. Sometimes they use the expression two-decker theory, three-decker theory, one over the other. It's intelligible. Three levels of reality. The three-decker theory, starting from the bottom, phenomenal, empirical, and absolutely real. Pratibhasika, Vyavaharika, and Paramarthika. No. Second one is whatever is denied by consciousness. Now take the familiar example, the rope snake. The rope snake. The object in front is only a rope. Isn't so? It is only a rope, rajju. Had I seen the rope as a rope, there is no problem. It's a valid cognition. Yeah, as it is, where it is, I see it. I qualify it like in Nyaya, as it is, where it is. It is a yathartha jnana. Supposing I cognize the object as a rope, even then, whatever is affirmed, this is what is affirmed by consciousness. Consciousness tells me, when it functions through the medium, it tells me that this is a rope. No problem. But in this case, I don't see the rope as a rope, but I see it as a snake. How do I express myself in the form of a statement? This is a snake. This is a snake. It's a proposition. I have the cognition, but I express it in the form of a statement, a sentence, a statement. I say, this is a snake. This refers to the object in front. Purovartita object, vastu. It is there. What is that object? It is a snake, I say. So, when I make the statement, what is the statement I make? This is a snake. if you look at the statement, this is a snake, this is the subject of the statement, snake is the predicate of the statement. Now this given object is affirmed to be snake, is said to be snake. Reverse it. The snakeness is affirmed of the this. There is a this. So I use the more demonstrative pronoun. It's called demonstrative pronoun, this and that. What is this? This? What is the this? The this is a snake. The predicate has relation to the subject term. The predicate is either affirmed as the subject or it is denied as the subject. When I deny it, I will say this is not a snake. Denial is there, not. When I affirm it, predicate is affirmed of the this. So in supposing this is a snake is my initial cognition. It is my first cognition, initial cognition. Okay? Subsequently, even to make this initial cognition, I require the help of consciousness. At the time it was certain. You are not telling a lie. You developed all the emotional reactions thinking that it is a real snake. You sweat, you ran away, you called for help, all the reactions have taken place. And your reporting is also correct. You are capable of using the proper language, identifying a snake as a snake. Was there a snake or not? There was a snake. Did you see it or not? You saw that. You are not telling a lie. You accepted it to be real. What is affirmed by consciousness can never be denied. First principle. At that time, to you, it was a snake. Now, subsequently, you go near the object with the help of a torch or taking the help of your friend. You go very closely with caution and all that one. Then you find that it is not a snake but a rope. So, what do you say? This is not a snake. Same subject, this. This is not a snake but a rope. Now, what is affirmed earlier by you in the first cognition is now denied by you. So, the same subject is there, but the snakeness is denied of the this. Snakeness is denied of the this. Instead, you affirm it as a rope. This is technically called Badhaka Jnana. The second cognition, we call it Badhaka Jnana. There is Badha, sublation of the earlier cognition. Now, in the earlier cognition, what did you sublate? Did you sublate the this? No. Because the this remains the same. This is Hiryanna. It's only Hiryanna who could make such a kind of an analysis. The subject in both the cases remains the same. But the change is only with regard to the predicate in the two statements. Earlier, something was affirmed of the this. Subsequently, something, the same thing is denied. Instead, something is affirmed. This is the initial cognition or the first cognition. It is followed by sublating cognition. In both the cases, the subject term remains the same, whereas the change is only in the predicate term. That means, now this is the, so far as the work of evidence of consciousness is concerned. It reveals the object. But why you did not see it as a rope but as a snake, for that we have got different explanations. It revealed the object. That's why we say every object has got two dimensions, two aspects. Samanyamsa and a Visheshamsa, a general aspect and a specific aspect. Any object. This table has got a general aspect, Samanyamsa, and a Visheshamsa. What is a Samanyamsa? This is an object. And very often in our language, the general aspect we can refer to by the this. You know that sometimes when in a hurry, we tell somebody, bring that. He understands the context, what that is. I am searching for a bow. Hey, please bring that. He is able to understand what I need. When I am making some kind of a shaking, Shiva noticed the ink flow is not all right. She came and gave me. Even if I say bring that, means she would understand. In a context, they require a replacement. So, there is a Samanyamsa. There is a Samanyamsa for it. And Visheshamsa, I say this is a writing material. This is a writing material. So, in the present case, there is no problem with regard to the Samanyamsa. That's why I say in both the cases, this remains, subject term remains the same. And Samanyamsa also is revealed by this consciousness. It has revealed the object in front of you. You thought of it as a snake, subsequently you correct yourself and say it is not a snake but a rope. There is sublation, bada, not with regard to the whole thing, but only with regard to the predicate aspect. This remains the same, subject remains the same. There is bada only with regard to the predicate aspect. Therefore, you correct yourself, say, this is not a snake but a rope. And then, am I clear so far? Why I say that there are two principles which are phenomenologically grounded. Whatever is affirmed by consciousness can never be denied. Now consciousness tells me it is not a snake. I can't say no, it's still only it says it is not a snake but a rope. I can't say that, no, it is only a snake. I go against the evidence of consciousness. If the consciousness says that something is the case, accept it. If consciousness tells you something is not the case, accept it. This is the case, this is not the case. In both the cases, it reveals the object. Shastra does the same thing. Does it compel you? No. It's a beautiful statement. The work of Shastra is restricted. It is a book of commandments containing vidhis and pratishedas. How you accept it and then function is something different. It can't take you by hand and say, oh, this is the morning, Balasubramanian, this is Sandhya time you do. It tells me, but I don't do. Because I am a Purusha, kartum, akartum, anyada kartum shakyatvat. I got the freedom. This is true. Where is Subramani? Oh, Subramani asked me, sir, do you do Sandhya? I said, no. Sir, then what about? Yeah, I do my puja regularly. The only thing is I did not carry the puja box here, only 10 days. I decide when to take, when not to take. When once in the handbag I kept my veil. And then they seized it. They said that no, it is as good as a trident. We can't allow you to carry this one. I say that it is not only veil, but the linga is there and my rudraksha is there. All of them are there. I pleaded. No, but even then, how can we? Well, it is enough to kill a person. and you must belong to that group. It's a trident. He said, not a trident. It is with great difficulty I convinced him and handed over him all that to you. Then when I get down at Singapore, you can kindly give me that one. He said, yes. I got a note and then he gave me. And then I went to the ground staff, waiting for all the air hostesses to come down, and then I took care of it. Then thereafter, I will put it in the registered bag and not in my handbag. So this happens. This happens. So this is for time solupanaka. So whatever is affirmed by consciousness is can never be denied. Whatever is denied by consciousness can never be accepted. Two principles which are phenomenologically grounded. Now, apply that. Now, in the case of rope snake, we have made the application. Apply that to the empirical objects. What kind of an object is this rope snake? Rope snake. What kind of reality? Is it real or not? Does it have any reality or not? It is here that Advaita shows his extraordinary perception of the situation for which there is no comparison. There was a Western philosopher by name Berkeley, Bishop. They got University of California at Berkeley. Bishop Berkeley. He was an empiricist. An empiricist. He belongs to the empiricist tradition. Locke, Berkeley, Hume, they go together. Descartes, Leibniz, Spinoza. Descartes, Spinoza, Leibniz. They go together. Rationalists. Just as Oxford idealists, Bradley, Green, Bradley, Bosanquet, they go together. Berkeley is an empiricist and a subjective idealist, like a Vijnanavadin. He is the counterpart of Vijnanavada school. Berkeley is subjective idealism. He developed a very radical philosophy, very radical, being an empiricist. An empiricist is one who accepts the empirical evidence provided by the senses. Locke, an empiricist. Berkeley is an empiricist. Hume also is an empiricist. A kind of a development has taken place from Locke to Berkeley, to Locke, L-O-C-K-E. From Locke to Berkeley, from Berkeley to Hume. And when it came to Hume, there was a dead end, beyond which we cannot proceed. He took philosophy to an end as a skeptic, as an empiricist, and then we cannot proceed any further. You have to come back, find an alternative route. So, empiricism, when it developed to its logical end, resulted in the philosophy of Hume, and it marked a dead end. Now, Bishop Berkeley was a very radical thinker. And Shankara is much more radical than Berkeley. Yesterday I said that Shankara is more radical than Arjuna. And Shankara is more radical than Berkeley. Berkeley said, because he knew that he is going to develop a kind of a radical philosophy which will not be accepted by others. So he gave a precaution before he wrote. He said, master the whole before you censure a part. Read my whole book from the beginning till the end. Don't read the first chapter and then begin to censure me. Don't do that. Listen, carefully go through the entire book. Master the whole, WHOLV. Master the whole before you censure the part. It's a good advice. And he held the theory, whatever is perceived exists, or whatever you say that exists must be perceived. Supposing you say there is an object, a table before me, it must be perceived. If it is not perceived, it doesn't exist. If you say that something exists, if you say a plant exists, then it must be perceived. So, he formulated a principle called existence is a matter of perception. SC is percipi. SC, I am writing here, SC is percipi. What SC is existence. What exists must be perceived. What exists must be perceived. Note it. What exists must be perceived. Example, if I say that this glass of water exists on the table, it must be perceived. If it is not perceived, it doesn't exist. Oh, it is a radical philosophy. Well, in my room, I have kept the mobile. I can't perceive it from here. Can I? No. There are abstractions. It's far away. Then does it mean that it does not exist? It still exists, even though I am not perceived. What will he say, Berkeley? He says, if I don't perceive it, God is perceiving. Therefore it exists. I only said that existence is a matter of perception. Whatever exists must be perceived. It exists there because it is perceived by the Lord. Can you deny that? No, you can't deny that one. You don't have any empirical evidence at all. Just as you are a person, he is a person, God is a person. He is looking at it, he is seeing that one. My interest is not to develop this one, and his principle is this one: whatever exists must be perceived. He is an empiricist. Now Shankara says, whatever is perceived exists. Whatever is perceived. This is what exists must be perceived. Write the two statements, then only you can see the effect of Shankara's declaration. Whatever exists must be perceived. I have to distinguish between the two look alike. Whatever is perceived exists. This is Berkeley. Then I am giving Shankara. No, sorry. I have made a mistake. Sorry. Whatever exists must be perceived. Whatever exists must be perceived. This is Berkeley. Whatever exists must be perceived. If it is not perceived, it does not exist. Now, Shankara says, whatever is perceived exists. Whatever is perceived exists. Why? It is perceived, therefore it exists. The rope snake is perceived. It exists. It exists at that, I am qualifying, it exists at that time, in that place, to this person. Why? Because it is perceived by me. I am not telling a lie. So, if Berkeley is an empiricist and holds the view that whatever exists must be perceived by the senses of somebody. Now Shankara goes to the extreme extent as a radical, he's a radical empiricist. Radical empiricist says, whatever is perceived exists. That is the major premise of the argument. Whatever is perceived exists. There is a vyapti and everything else is there. Whatever, put it in the argument. I put in the form of syllogism. This is a major premise. Whatever is perceived exists. Rope snake, Horus, is perceived. Draw the conclusion, therefore, rope snake exists. It has got existence. Major premise, minor premise, conclusion. If you want, you can change the order. Pratigya, Hetu and Udaharana. Rope snake exists. Conclusion, and the conclusion becomes the pratigya here. Rope snake exists because it is perceived. And vyapti, whatever is perceived exists. Now, can you fall with the vyapti? Whatever is perceived exists? No. Anything that is perceived exists. The sky is perceived as blue, therefore blueness exists there. Though you may say that blueness is not the real color of the sky. It may be kalpida, it may be contributed, but it is perceived. How is it perceived? Sakshibhasya. Our logic is full. So, this rope snake object, shell silver object, dream lion object, which you call Gandharva Nagara, all of them exist because they are perceived. Perceived by what? Perceived by consciousness. There is no other element which can perceive anything. It is consciousness. And so you find that the Berkeleyan statement is totally reversed by Shankara. If Berkeley is an empiricist, Shankara is a radical empiricist, and therefore he is prepared to give a kind of reality even to the illusory objects. Even illusory objects exist. The rope snake is an illusory object. An object of erroneous perception. Even an object of erroneous perception has existence, even though its existence may be the low level of existence, the low order of existence. It is called an illusory object which possesses reality. The reality it possesses is called phenomenal, some pradibhasika vastu. It is called pradibhasika. Only in the pratiti it is there. Pradibhasika vastu. It is called pradibhasika vastu. Phenomenal reality. Phenomenal reality. Phenomenally real, phenomenal reality. What about the other objects? The objects of the table, empirical world, day-to-day world, such as the table, the chair. You have got so many examples for that. Rope snake, shell silver, and mirage, and dream objects. All of them come under this category. They are all perceived. Whatever is perceived is real. And it is Antony Flew. Yesterday I forgot the name. Antony Flew. Antony Flew. I will bring next time history of Western philosophy written by him. Antony Flew. So the empirical objects such as the table and the chair and all of them, they are also real. They are called empirically real. empirical reality. Why? They are perceived. And the argument is, whatever is perceived exists, the table is perceived, therefore the table exists. Major premise, this is called a major premise. It contains a vyapti, minor premise, and then the conclusion. Change the object. Instead of RS, you put the table and the chair, the mountain, the ocean, all these objects of our day-to-day experience. Now, Hiriyanna makes a subtle distinction between the two. A phenomenally real object, the pradibhasika vastu, is a private object. Private object. Whereas an empirical object is a public object. It is a public object. What is the difference between private and public? A private object is seen only by the particular person at a particular time, at a particular place. When I see the rope snake, you don't see. I don't see the rope snake all the time. Many times I see it only a rope. But this time I saw it as a snake. Oops. So, to me, a person, there is a place there, time. So, person, place, time are the conditioning factors. It is purely a private experience. A dream experience is a private experience. Nobody, not even wife who is sleeping by my side, know anything unless I tell her, look here, this is the experience, perceptual experience I have. This is a private experience. Our pleasures and pain, they are also private experience. But in this particular case we are talking about, we have to make a distinction between two kinds of objects, objects which are private, objects which are public. When I say public means this table can be seen by all of us at the same time. Nothing prevents you seeing this table when I am seeing. It is open to everybody. It's a public object. A vyavaharika object is a public object. A pradibhasika object is a private object. And this vyavaharika object, it has got only a limited reality, empirical reality. When the knowledge of the supreme reality arises, it gets sublated. Just as a pradibhasika vastu that gets sublated the moment there is a knowledge of the given object as a rope. As I've been telling you, the problem is only with regard to the subject of the proposition. There is no problem with regard to the subject of the proposition. It remains the same. Whereas the difficulty arises only with regard to the predicate of the object, and therefore in Advaita epistemology we say that the samanyamsa is seen by the antakarana. Samanyamsa is seen by the antakarana. It is reported correctly, but the problem arises only with regard to the Visheshamsa. The ropeness is not seen by me because the ropeness remains concealed at the time because of the avarana shakti of the avidya. That special feature is concealed. Instead, it has projected something new. And it is a new object. The snake is a new object. Projected where? On this, which is adhisthana. There may be some difference, that is Savajñātman, adhisthana and adhikara, adhara. We will consider that later. Not a very big issue. What is the substratum, adhisthana? This is adhisthana. Something is superimposed on that. Snakeness is superimposed on that. Where did you get the snakeness? It is contributed by avidya. Avidya has got two powers, we say. Through avarana shakti, It concealed the ropeness of the given object. It didn't stop at that. Had it stopped at that, there is no problem. Having concealed the ropeness, it has projected something else of its own creation. That snakeness, the snake. It is an apurva sarpa. They use the word apurva. How can you say it is an apurva? All questions are asked, all replies are given. The point to be noted here is that the damage is not done to the entire subject and object. One is samanyamsa, the other is visheshamsa. There is no damage to the samanyamsa. It remains the same. The problem is with regard to the visheshamsa. There, the contribution of avidya. It has got avarana shakti by which it conceals the visheshamsa. You got a viksheva shakti by which it projects something which is not there, connects the two. Therefore, you say this is a snake. Now, it has got a very low level of reality, whereas the vyavaharika object, which is a public one, it continues to exist so far as I am concerned, so far as you are concerned. Assuming that we have not got the liberating knowledge. The moment I have the liberating knowledge, the vyavaharika object is not really the vyavaharika object. All of them appear to be Brahman. They become Brahman. Brahman is a paramarthika reality. But don't ask the question, where do they go? Now then the reply will be, where do they come from? Where do they exist? They exist only in Brahman. Brahman is the adhisthana for everything, whether it is pradibhasika or vyavaharika, the ultimate substratum for everything is only Brahman. And then in our day-to-day life, we make such a distinction because we are taught, we have to give an intelligible experience to our things of the world, day-to-day life. Because just to conceal and say, well, only there is Brahman, I am talking about atato brahma jigyasa janmadhyasaka. Well, that philosophy we don't require now. We don't require now. We have to consider ourselves as living beings here in the world with the problems of distinctions. Then, once we are ready, understand the real difficulty in which we are placed, then we can move gradually, finding the appropriate person, finding the appropriate way in doing that one. They have got course requirement. If American universities insist on course requirements, so also the Vedanta insists on course requirements. Oh, you want to study? All right. Have you done this preliminary course? Otherwise, you do a course on that, then you can come to the next course. Same thing if you say, do a preliminary course, and then you can come to the next course. We have got therefore Sad-darsanas. Therefore, three levels of reality: pradibhashika, vyavaharika, paramarthika. Paramarthika, example, there is no example for that excepting paramarthika reality is Brahman. Brahman is paramarthika reality. Vyavaharika reality, examples many, all the objects of the day-to-day world. Pradibhashika, yes, we have quite a few. Therefore, they are arranged as three levels of reality. How you are going to arrange? You can talk about paramarthika, vyavaharika, pradibhashika. I would talk pradibhashika and vyavaharika. Sometimes they are clubbed together under the general name vyavaharika. Ella vyavaharathil dhaan irukku. My swapna experience, my day-to-day experience, all of them. There is nothing wrong. But in order to go deeper into the subtle distinctions, that by then says, yes, we can make a distinction between the vyavaharika and the pradibhashika. Thus, we have three levels of reality. All the three levels are phenomenologically grounded in a very rational way, relying upon the evidence of consciousness, whose evidence is apodictic, certain. Whatever we do it on the evidence of consciousness. Whatever we fail to do, even then there is the evidence of consciousness. That is what Shastra does. That is what Surya does. Shastram bhasayate arkavati. Come. Huh? That is Berkeley. That is Berkeley. His statement is whatever exists must be perceived, must be open to perception. If it is not open to perception, it does not exist. That is Berkeley. It's a radical view. No, we are not examining Berkeley. Well, he was refuted. And you have heard about Johnson? Samuel Johnson, a man noted for robust common sense. He said, I am going to refute Berkeley. It's a fantastic, nonsensical philosophy he has developed. It can't be accepted by common sense. I am going to refute. What did he do? He said that he jumped on the floor. The floor exists. I said that yes, but even then it holds good. Well, whatever exists is perceived. You felt, you realized the existence of the ground by what? By your feet. That is a tactile sensation, muscle sensation, all of them are there. And therefore, there is evidence for that. Therefore, this ground exists. You can jump on that, fall on that, still it exists. You are not refuted Berkeley. You only confirmed Berkeley. Confirmed Berkeley. Now, I don't want to go, he is a subjective existentialist. So what is it that exists in the world? No matter exists. Only ideas exist. Ideas exist. And he developed in a particular way, one kind of a subjective idealism, which is comparable to the Vijnanavada school in Buddhism. The interest, it is only a way of introducing the problem. He has a principle that is based upon empirical evidence. That principle is reversed by Shankara in Advaita. We say that whatever is perceived exists. Whatever is perceived exists. Then do you say that we are not perceived? We are perceived. And therefore, some small aspect of reality must be credited to that. Lowest one, phenomenal reality. Sometimes they use the word apparent reality, phenomenal reality. Pradibhasika satta, then vyavaharika satta, then pradibhasika, vyavaharika, then paramarthika. Consciousness? I don't follow. Consciousness I hear. A consciousness reveals objects. Reveals objects. It is a light. How does it reveal objects? In most of the cases, it reveals objects through a medium. For example, think of the case of the electricity. The current is there. But the current gives you illumination only when it passes through a physical medium, whatever it may be. The old type of bulb or the new type of bulb, whatever it may be. It requires a medium. It has the potency, but the potency should be manifested through a physical medium. Because it is not manifested through a physical medium, would you say it doesn't have that power? It is there. So consciousness reveals in many cases, I say many cases, through the medium of the senses and the mind and the senses. In some cases, I said many cases, in some cases it can directly reveal. For example, your mental states, pleasure, pain and all of them. Mind is an internal sense. Are you clear? There are the external senses, the visual sense, auditory sense and all of them, external. That is the internal sense, mind. That is called antakarana. It may have the name Antakarana, whether it is a sense or not, that is debated. We will leave it to the Bhamadikara and others on that question. For the time being, let us assume that we have the senses, body, senses. Senses are the cognitive instruments. Then there is the internal sense are called Antakarana. Now the mind or the Antakarana has got several mental states, pleasure, pain, suffering and all that one. All of them are not the qualities of the mind. All of them are the states of the mind. I make a very clear distinction. The mind is subject to changes, parinama. And every state it undergoes, change that it undergoes, it may be a particular kind of a mental state. If you take away all the mental states, I don't think that there is such a thing called the mind. It may be still it is a kind of a state, that stillness of the mind, the agitations of the mind, the perturbances of the mind, the calmness of the mind, each is a mental state. How are they known? I know my mental states. I know I am quite happy now because you are asking questions which tries to bring out in full some of the hidden problems in Advaita. I am happy. My happiness I don't have to tell you. I experience it. How do I experience that one? Not through the senses, because their senses are outside the mind, extraneous to the mind. And like the sun, it goes on revealing. Here in the case of the mental states, how are they known? Do you know your mental states or not? Answer me. Do you know or not? You know. Only you can know. You can report to me subsequently. I can guess, sir, is there anything wrong? Did you eat well? Swamiji asks every time, did you eat well? Swamiji, I ate well. I am quite comfortable. So I have to report. You have to report. I can guess, but even then, nothing like getting a direct report from you. Assuming that you are capable of reporting correctly, you are not telling a lie, all that, given all those conditions. And your mental states are directly revealed by consciousness. Kevala sakshibhasya. We use the word, it is a sakshin. Consciousness is sometimes called a sakshin. Contextually, it should be called a sakshin. Sakshin is a self. The self is a Brahman. Therefore, you should not say the whole world is produced by sakshin. It is an abuse of the philosophical terms. Contextually, we must use. Sakshin is a contextual term. It is a witness. நம்ம தமிழ்ல சொல்லுவோம், நாங்கள் தெலுங்குலையும் சொல்லுவாங்க எல்லாரும், மனசாட்சியும்போம். மனசுக்கு சாட்சியா இருக்கிறது இந்த செல்ஃப். மனசாட்சி தொட்டு சொல்லு, மனசே இல்லை, மனசாட்சியா. The sakshi or the sakshin, it should tell you. That means consciousness very often functions through the mind, the senses and the body. Sometimes when the senses are dropped out, only the mind remains there, the states of the mind, the vrittis of the mind should also be revealed. Who reveals that one? Consciousness. So all the time it is a revealing principle. It does its work correctly. There is no problem with regard to that one, as there is no problem with regard to the sun. There is no problem with regard to scripture. It does convey the message. Whether you accept the message or you misinterpret the message or ignore the message, it is left to you as a free agent. You are a moral agent. Accept the responsibility. You are a moral agent because, go back in the argument, you are a rational being. That's why, what's time? Come on. This will be the last question. Yeah, he raised. James.
What is the difference, if any, between the statement whatever is perceived exists and the drishti-srishti vada?
Drishti-srishti?
Vada.
Oh, very good. Why not we take it up in the next class? Okay, drishti. Well, we have two theories. For the Uttamadhikari, we had one theory. For the Madhyamadhikari, not Adhama, Madhyamadhikari, we got another theory. So, drishti, srishti, vada, for the Uttamadhikari, srishti, drishti, vada, for me, for Shastrigal. I don't know for you, maybe what exists is perceived. What is perceived exists. Not connectly with this one, but in a way you can show, you will take it up. Okay? Time editilla. So, rehearsal, how the whole thing is phenomenologically grounded. There are two principles. Whatever is affirmed by consciousness can never be denied. What is denied by consciousness can never be affirmed. It is on that basis we talk about the three levels of reality. And in the case of perceptual error, there are two aspects in a thing, samanyamsa, visheshamsa. No damage to samanyamsa, it remains the same. Problem is with regard to visheshamsa. Why there is such a problem? Contribution by avidya. It conceals the nature of the special feature of the given object, projects something else and makes us see. Okay?